Chapter 1 The Asylum. It was a rainy day, as always, thunderbolts striking here and there. Steps were heard in the hallway. A shrink had brought his son to the asylum for a Father's Sunday. It will turn out to be the biggest mistake he will have ever made. The shrink had been given the special case of a murderer, one unlike the others. The shrink and his son had arrived at the doorway, locking the murderer in. "How is he?" asked the shrink to the guards. "He freaked out a few times today, yelling, 'Get it out' or something," said the guard. "Okay, and has he mentioned anything about the killings?" "No, unfortunately." Dr. Lewis turned to his son and smiled to finally open the door and get in the room. A cold, dark, and gray room was in front of them. The only window was closed by huge iron bars. Only a small toilet, a sink with a broken mirror, and a mattress were living in the room. A man was sitting with his legs held behind his arms, close to his body. He slowly turned his head towards the shrink with no emotion at first. Dr. Lewis brought in 2 chairs for he and his son to sit on. The old man presented his son to the patient. Straight ahead, the patient in the corner of the room knew that he and the shrink's son were alike. Well, not completely. The patient slowly stood up. The shrink could not believe how he was able to walk, given the accident. The patient's long, dark, messy hair shook at every step that he took. Once close enough to the kid, he just tilted his head to examine the shrink's son. Suddenly, his eyes opened wildly as he started to walk back. The patient fell down and stopped moving, still staring at the kid. "You are like me," he said. The kid was a little shy and was hiding behind his father's back. The man slowly crawled back, scared that the kid might jump on him at any time. "I'm a little kid too, you know. I'm supposed to go to class 2 days." "Well, mister, how are you doing today?" finally said the shrink, who was writing down little notes in his notebook. "I think I'm good, Mr. Lewis," said the patient. "That's pretty good. How about this night? Have you had any nightmares?" The man jumped and screamed in a high-pitched voice, almost annoying. He twitched violently and jerked a little. The little boy was really scared and held his father's arm really tightly. Out of nowhere, the man stood up and raised his chest. Just by this action, he already looked stronger. "Who are you to ask me this kind of questions?" yelled loudly the patient. "I'm your shrink, and if you remember well, we have a session each week together," responded Dr. Lewis calmly. "It still doesn't mean you can ask those questions." "Well, my job is to actually ask you questions in order to understand you, why you do things differently than others, and why you killed." The man looked away with anger and responded that he didn't kill anyone. The shrink opened his portfolio and took out some journals with troubling titles. For example, "Clown Masked Murderer in London," "5 Teens Killed in Forest North of London," etc. The shrink explained that with the help of a private investigator, proof, and some witnesses, they identified him as the mastermind behind all of the murders. The patient jerked again and now looked amused about the situation. He sat down, staring at the shrink and smirking at him. "Well, sir, you are indeed a smart man for your age." "I beg your pardon?" asked the shrink. "Well, you see, even if we still try to say to you, you won't even hear our story. We didn't kill them." "Then who did? All the evidence stares back at you." "Let me tell your son a little story, a very interesting story." The son felt a little bit relieved by what he said and sat down at the chair his father had brought. The man smiled back at the boy, then to his father. "Let's start the story, shall we?"
Blimey, look at this mansion, mate. It's huge, mentioned a drunk kid. Yeah, you're right, Mark, but who could live here? There's no road around, affirmed the second half drunk teen who was a little older than Mark. Come on, Justin, don't be a prat. It's abandoned, can't you see? Responded a third kid. Oh, you're right. We should go inside, said the fourth one coming out of the bushes. Oh, and by the way, I just chundered in the bushes. We don't care about that, Lucas. Where are Matthew and Julia? A group of 6 drunk teenagers were in the wood. 6 immature, unconscious little people in the wood. Only the manor in front of them was populating the environment. They did want to go in the manor, a bloke like they said. The only thing they didn't know is that someone was living in this home. Someone that we barricaded in the house for a good reason. They all gathered around the house and tried the front door, but it was locked. Wood plank was also blocking the windows from the outside. The group gathered and tried to bust the door open, but it was also full of locks from the outside. The house was impenetrable. The teenagers starting to scatter around to find an opening, and one of them, Justin, found an axe. Hey mates, I got an axe. We can bust the door. All 5 of them were standing around Justin and the door. They watched Justin swing the axe on the door, destroying it swings after swings. They didn't know, but they all watched their life getting slayed one by one, swings after swings. The door now had a giant hole in the middle of it. They all got in, and they were using their lighter as a light source. The mansion looked even bigger from the inside. There was the first floor, a second one, and the basement. The teenagers separated in groups of 2. The couple was together, Mark with Justin and Lucas with Gabriel. The 2 most courageous boys, Justin and Mark, rushed down the stairs to the basement with the idea they must find some treasure or something. Lucas and Gabriel stayed on the first floor, and Matthew and Julia went on the second floor. All in different places, not even knowing that it was the last time they saw each other.
At the second floor, the couple started to watch around in research of something, but they quickly began making out. They had found a room with a bed. It was looking old, but in the dark they couldn't specify anything from it other than it would do the job. Some moment after the action, Matthew thought that he heard something and started to walk towards the half-broken door that was barely standing up, just like them. Julia, scared, was following her boyfriend and was holding his hand pretty tightly. Matthew asked if anyone was there, and there was no answer. They turned back but realized it was way darker than when they entered the room, so Matthew took his lighter out of his pocket and lighted to find their way to the bed. A face with black hair was upside down. What looked like the man's face had a mask, a clown's mask. There were 2 little holes in his eye. One of them had a reddish color in the empty black eye, but the other one was green and crying. The man hanging upside down took Matthew's head and he threw him out of the window. His head went through a spiked-shaped branch. Julia started to yell, but with no time wasted, the man jumped on her and snapped her neck. She fell down, looking at her right side, looking at Matthew without seeing him.